Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. And Happy New Year. I thought for this episode it would be fun for me to share with you 5 musical New Year's resolutions that I have. So it's that time of the year, right, where people make resolutions, goals that they want to accomplish in the upcoming new year. And I thought it would be fun to share some of the musical ones that I have been sort of thinking about in my head, things that I want to accomplish, things that I want to do in this coming year musically. All right, so I have 5 things. The first one is I want to explore lost albums, and what I mean by that is that bands that I already know, but maybe there's parts of their catalog that I'm unfamiliar with. For instance, I just made a video on Megadeth that's going to be posted later, and there's albums from them from like the 90s and the early 2000s that I don't really know that well, if I know them at all. Uriah Heep would be another example of a band like that. A lot of these bands are bands that I'm into, but there's that time frame in the 90s, you know, when grunge was hitting, and a lot of these bands, let's be honest, they weren't putting out their best albums. But I kind of want to explore more and dig into those albums that I missed in a lot of bands' catalogs. So I thought it would be fun for me to do that, and that's a goal that I want to do. I do have Spotify, so it's easy for me to listen to these albums, and even if I don't like them, well, I gave them a listen and I know what they're about. The other thing is I want to explore more new bands, and the new bands as in, you know, bands that have just come out, and underground bands, and I'm okay with that. But I realized as I was watching other people's videos with their year-end best of the year and stuff, I realized that I don't listen to enough new music. So along with the new bands, I want to make sure I'm also listening to the new releases from other bands as they come out. Again, I have Spotify, so it's easy for me to do that, so that at the end of the year, hopefully I can do a year recap with, you know, the new releases and new bands, I guess is the way to put it. I want to stay on top of new albums being put out by bands, and I also want to stay more on top of newer bands that are coming out. Then another thing I want to do is I want to do more reading. Music reading, and I have plenty of books sitting on my shelf, and there's a bunch of them that I haven't read yet. I always talk about Martin Popoff. He's my favorite metal author. He's always putting out a lot of great books, and I want to do more reading, not only on individual bands, but just about music, metal, and rock history in general. I have books over here that address like sort of the cultural, sociological aspects of heavy metal and hard rock. And that's something that I find interesting, and I want to do more on the channel, kind of discussing what it's like being a hard rocker or a metalhead, and these, you know, the way of life, the way we think, that type of things. I want to explore those things more, and I have some books on that. I just got to sit down and I got to dig more into reading them. You know, in history of certain genres, I have this Swedish death metal book that I haven't really read much of. So I have a bunch of books that I want to read, and I know that there's other books out there for me to read. So I want to make that part of my thing, reading more, maybe doing some more book reviews on this channel and talking about styles and lifestyle things within heavy metal and hard rock. All right, now the last 2 are related to my collecting habits, and one of them is that I don't want to buy much more new vinyl. What I mean by new vinyl is stuff that the band puts out a new album and they release it on vinyl. I've talked about this in other videos. I'm really disappointed with quality control with newer vinyls. I've had such bad luck, and the price for a lot of new vinyl is a turnoff for me. And I've been saying this since the beginning of my channel, that I'm going to make a video on, is it even worth buying new vinyl? When an album that just comes out in this upcoming year, 2022, is it really worth buying it on vinyl? I mean, the answer is if it's worth it to you, then it's worth it. And if you get enjoyment out of it, okay. But for me, I'm starting to sour a little bit on it. it just sounds a lot like it's just a straight digital transfer onto the vinyl. The price is so expensive, the quality control. I've just decided that, you know what, I'm going to back off on buying new vinyl. I'll still do stuff like when Black Sabbath puts out these box sets. I'm going to buy those, but I'm going to back off on buying new vinyl and concentrate more on, you know, stuff that was released in the 70s and the 80s or maybe the early 90s, stuff that was released when vinyl, when it was being released specifically for vinyl, before digital, things went 100% digital. And that sort of leads into my next and last New Year's resolution is that I want to fill in some of the gaps in the holes in my collection. I've been making videos going through my albums, and I mentioned Discogs, and I've been inputting my record collection into Discogs. And as I go through them, I've been listening to a lot of the records to check the quality of them, and I noticed that I need to upgrade some of my albums. Maybe they're too noisy or scratched up or whatever, and it's left some holes in my catalog. Like, for instance, with Rush, I did a Rush video, and I was like, man, I'm surprised I don't have Farewell to Kings on vinyl. I also had my Caress of Steel. The side 2 of the record is like super noisy for some weird reason, even though it looks, you know, almost mint condition. So I want to fill in some of those gaps, and there's other bands like that too that I'm missing an album here, I'm missing an album there, and I want to go back, and as I'm inputting and you know, making my collection, putting my collection together in Discogs, I'm sort of making notes about the albums that I'm missing with those certain bands. All right, there you go. There's my New Year's musical resolutions. Let me know in the comments down below what are some of yours. If you have any, some things maybe you want to do different, or you want to do better with your music listening, with your collecting, or whatever. Let me know in the comments down below. And until we see you again, make sure you have a great New Year and stay heavy, stay metal.